Trump is openly considering new ways to undermine the vote. Last night, a far-right radio host pitched the president an unconstitutional plot to seize control of state-run elections.
If you declare a national security emergency as the president of the United States, they can't challenge it. It can only be overturned by a 2/3 vote of both houses of Congress. So if you do this in the next month, we will get photo ID, proof of citizenship, and a limit to mail-in ballots. And
let me just say that stranger things have happened. Okay, I'll leave it at that.
That's your president. Quote, stranger things have happened.
To be willing to go along with Trump's lies about the 2020 election. But let's be very clear. There's zero evidence of fraud. He's never been able to prove it. Our election system is not compromised in any way. So there is no need to declare a national emergency. The only national emergency I see in Trump's eyes is that he's deeply unpopular with the American people. And he knows that the Republicans are not going to do well when it comes to the midterm elections. And so what does he need to do? He wants to interfere in these elections to get the results. And I'm someone who, as a conservative, I believe in states' rights, but I guess these conservatives now think that states' rights are out the window if there's an election in a state where Donald Trump doesn't like the results. And it's really appalling to me, and I would hope that more people who are heading to the voting in the election in November would take that into consideration, because this was something that I talked about a lot in the lead up to the 2024 election, was the threat to democracy that Donald Trump was. And that didn't seem to really make much of a difference when it came to voters. But now we're seeing that you guys voted for Trump because you thought that he would follow through on these campaign promises, whether it were bringing down prices or it was going to be not starting a war in the Middle East. And he's broken campaign promise after campaign promise. So I would hope that now people are waking up to this idea of him being a threat to democracy when he's floating things like declaring a national emergency in our elections when there is no emergency.
To talk about all this and their allies and Lindell, because they've got nothing to show for what they've done. And I think that is what is motivating voters to go to the polls. We do hear there is a large amount of Americans that are very upset. They know that January 6th was a step too far. Even people that used to support the president, it was more than a step too far, but these are even people that supported the president that might have been concerned about some of the things that they were throwing out. It's like, this is over. You see that happening. But you also see so many people across this country, right, needing serious government, needing serious governance. We have an affordability crisis. We have, AI that we need, data centers. I mean, we have all of these things. And instead of that, you have this really farcical effort by the Republican Party to distract people into things that, as you say, are not serious at all. But what's important for people to know is that in many of these instances, I mean, the president is not prevailing on his voter suppression agenda in court. He's not prevailing on it in communities. You're still seeing massive amounts of turnout. These aren't like quiet primary elections where nobody's turning out. You're seeing really interesting patterns as well among people. And that's what the president's afraid of, and it's why he wants to subvert the election. But I don't believe the American people are going to let him. I don't think the courts are going to let him. And we're really going to show him and his allies, it's going to show who they are. Trump
demanded these red state gerrymanders to rig the maps in his favor and his party come November. It's part of this larger scheme, by the president to January 6th, the midterm elections. In other words, to undermine free and fair elections and to retain power for his party by any means necessary. And the president, who is near singularly focused on his voter suppression bill, he calls it the SAVE Act, he's not exactly being shy about his disdain for our democracy.
I just start by saying to our audience, what you just heard there was simplistic stupidity, okay? It was telling the President of the United States something that is just constitutionally and factually incorrect. And the reality of it is, when you engage in simplistic stupidity, particularly when you're speaking to someone who doesn't have the intellectual capacity to understand that it is simplistic stupidity, and the best answer they can give you is, well, stranger things have happened, you're on a roller coaster to election hell. And that's the reality that's been set up for us by this administration for the past 2 years. We started this conversation at the beginning of this term, warning people that the end game was to get to a point where Donald Trump could somehow engage in invoking the Insurrection Act, declaring a national emergency so that these 2026 elections could be taken by him and redesigned however he wants.
July CPI hitting the wires, up 0.1% on the headline month-over-month number, exactly as expected. In the rearview mirror, as of this point, still unrevised, down 0.4%, was a massive drop for June. If we take out food and energy, up 0.2, exactly as expected. And if we take a year-over-year perspective, headline year-over-year up 3.4, exactly as expected. That follows 3.5. 3.4 would be the lightest since March, when we were at 3.3. And in my opinion, maybe the most important number is the CPI year-over-year core, expected 2.5, and it arrives at 2.5. That follows 2.6. So we had January, February, June, July, all at 2.5. We haven't been below 2.5 since March of 21, when we were at 1.6.
I think you nailed it, right? The cost of living did improve in July, and yet, yes, it does remain way too high. And yes, these price hikes continue to swallow up any sort of wage increases that workers are seeing. So 3.4%, as you mentioned, that's the new inflation rate on an annual basis. Touch better than 3.5% the month before. This was exactly as expected. The monthly rate coming in at just 0.1%. That's a pretty benign figure, also as expected. You can see the trend for monthly inflation in the last 2 years. All the way on the right side of the screen, those last two bars, right? In June, there was this major decline in prices, the biggest since COVID, and now in July, just a small increase. And yet, after back-to-back months of pretty subdued monthly inflation, when you look at the inflation rate on an annual basis, it's still way too high. That's what this chart shows you, right? 3.4%. Some context, John, that is above the 3% in early 2025 when President Trump started his second term. In fact, it's also higher than it was at this point last summer. So there really hasn't been much progress when it comes to inflation. And when we look at some of the drivers here for the month of July, on a monthly basis, gas prices, they did go down almost 3%. So that was a major factor here. Of course, we now know that gas prices have gone back up because the Strait of Hormuz, despite what the president says, is not reopened. Now, grocery prices were only up very slightly, so that is encouraging. However, also another impact from the war is airfare, right? 2.2%. We know jet fuel has gotten dramatically more expensive because of the war, and we know airlines have not been shy about passing those costs along to consumers. Now look at motor oil. That's an interesting one. 5.5% between June and July. And, I had been reporting earlier this year about concerns about the supply chain and the Strait of Hormuz being closed and how that could cause a shortage or not enough supplies of motor oil. So you wonder if that is part of the factor for there. And then look at lettuce. Lettuce, a 16% plunge, the biggest on record, John. That does seem to reflect the fact that people are not buying as much lettuce because of all these concerns about contaminated.
We could still make the claim that we're not quite at the 2% level, Fed's objective, and of course the AI and related issues, especially on issuance, really questioning the costs and the inflation implications of what the AI build out may have in store for us in the future.
Wednesday, 12 August, year of our Lord 2026. We're actually jammed today. I want to go to the White House. Dr. Peter Navarro. Dr. Navarro, you just put a piece up on John Tamny's Real Clear Markets. Explain this to us. Put it in English since it was kind of garbled. Santelli was great, but CNN's a little garbled. Sir, what's the reality here?
I'm shocked that the left wants to garble all the good news, Steve, that we have. It's just so interesting. But look, we have a situation where the left wants you to believe that tariffs cause inflation. We have a situation where we obviously have a severe oil price shock, where the commentariat both wants you to believe that it's going to cause like a wage price spiral like the 70s, and that the Fed has to raise interest rates into the teeth of that. And both of those lines of attack on Donald John Trumpnomics are both absurd and dangerous. They're dangerous because at the Fed, as Bernanke and Greenspan taught us, you do not raise interest rates into the teeth of an energy price shock. I explained that in the Real Clear Markets piece. And what we're seeing today is a continuation of a downward trend in core inflation. As the great Rick Santelli mentioned, the core fell again. It's muted. It's about 2.5. The Fed's been talking a two target for years, but 2.5 is really good. So if you look behind the veil, Steve, all sorts of good stuff for the American people. I know folks are hurting. We don't want to say anything other than that, but we are working hard. So you got prescription drug prices down by 0.8%. Used cars and trucks, 1.9% down. My favorite in the whole thing is car insurance. Man, when Biden, get this, Steve, car insurance inflation hit 21% in 2023 at the height of the Biden inflation, which we're still dealing with. As of this report, it was down 4.5% from a year ago. That's real progress. It's a short story. Check it out at Real Clear Markets, but it's a continuation of what we've been talking about, Steve, on your show, that Trumpnomics, deregulation, tax cuts, strategic energy dominance, fair trade and tariffs, they all work basically to promote growth, wage increases, and stability in terms of prices.
Just real quickly, the 2% of inflation for the Fed's always been a target, but I've always said it's almost like unachievable, except in President Trump's first term, which was historic, right? Here, to get to 2.5%, that's pretty monumental, is it not, sir?
Look, we inherited a mess from Joe Biden, and it was a special kind of inflation, Steve. It was what we call demand pull inflation. Too much money chasing too few goods. You had a situation where Biden and Congress, with the help of a few Republicans, passed these massive spending bills. We've had to fund it with money we don't have through bonds, which drove up interest rates. And we had the worst inflation we had in decades. And if we had re-elected Kamala Harris, we'd be in the 1970s stagflation scenario now, and things would be really out of control. Trump comes in with the same program we had in the first term, but even more muscular. And everything we do is designed to promote growth in a non-inflationary way while driving up real wages for our MAGA base, which is the blue-collar working class Americans who shower afterward and not before. And so it's working. And we just, the obvious danger on the horizon is oil shocks bleeding in to the core. But so far, so good. That has not happened. But we'll be here on the Watchtower, Steve, and doing these. Every week there's reports that come out. What I'm trying to do, based on my macro skills, is give everybody an analysis of what actually is going on, because you sure as hell can't get that from most of the financial media, and you damn well can't get it from CNN.
Real quickly, where do people go? We got 30 seconds. Where do people go to get all your content? One-stop shop, Dr. Navarro.
Well, go to Real Clear Markets today. We do want to support that page. It's a really good thing. But PeterNavarro.com is the one-stop shop. Sign up for the Substack. Sign up for the Navarro Express podcast if you like podcasts. And then I regularly post on X, Truth Social, Getter, Instagram, and maybe TikTok at some point. Although it's I kind of get a it's kind of hard to do that. But
yeah.
You know what I'm saying.
Dr. Navarro, we got to bounce. Thank you so much.
We got big doings tomorrow.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
There's more economic news. Cortez got a great piece of a Daily Signal. I'm going to talk about that. Maybe we can get Steve in towards the end of the show. Also discuss the CPI number. And I want to thank Dr. Navarro for taking time away from a stepped out of a meeting to do that from the White House. I think it needed some explanation, particularly given CNN and other people. Gerald Malloy, the first, I believe, race called last night was in Vermont, the at-large seat. I think it's for the whole state. Gerald Malloy won the Republican nomination. It was called almost out of the box. Gerald, this is a example of kind of grit and determination. Tell the War and Posse your journey. How did we get to last night when you have a blowout win, sir?
It's a long journey, but I felt like I needed to run again. Steve, thank you for having me on. Thank you for my team. Yeah, we had a 76% win last night, but it started way back in 21. Senator Leahy retired. I said, you know what? I can do better than the guy that's looking at taking his position, Peter Welch. I was right. I didn't beat Peter Welch, and I ran against Bernie Sanders. I can tell you I beat Bernie Sanders in 3 debates, but the Vermonters went with him again. And this most recent election now for the at-large seat, going against Congresswoman Becca Bannon. She's done nothing for Vermont. She's focused on the wrong issues. I could not stand by and watch Vermont go down the tubes. We've become unaffordable, a place to leave, largely because of her lack of performance in DC and 8 years in the state Senate, pushing all the taxes and policies and blocking reform for the state. So I had to jump in. West Point grad, decorated veteran, 40 years of government business experience, MBA. The last thing Vermont needs is another career politician, progressive left socialist. And really, I see what's going on across the country. We've got socialism, backing up a little bit. Progressive left hijacked the Democrat Party, and now the progressive left showing its true colors. They are socialists. Vermont has been driven right into the ground by socialists for way too long. Vermonters are upset. I'm going to win. I'm going to be the only House member of the GOP in the House in all of New England. But I couldn't stand by and watch Becca Bannon do nothing for another 2 years. So I jumped in and had a huge win last night. Very excited about this race.
Here's what I think confuses people. So walk us through this. So many great folks and patriots up in Vermont, working class. You've got Bernie, you've got her in the House. You've got some pretty far left socialist crazies already. What is the program you're going to pitch to working class people in Vermont to say, hey, look, this is how I think we get the country back on track? Just give us 2 or 3 examples of what you're going to push.
Well, so it's been 25 years since we've had moderate, balanced representation in Washington, D.C. That has not produced results for Vermont. None of our congressional delegation works with our soon-to-be record 6-term Republican governor. So I bring a business experiment. One of the things going on here in Vermont is become very business unfriendly. Businesses and therefore people are leaving. I want to turn that around with our Republican governor, create a business-friendly environment so I know that I can attract businesses, technology, innovation businesses to come here to Vermont, bring the people, and have a thriving economy again. We don't have that right now. All we're getting from our congressional delegation is bashing and against the current administration. It's not delivering results.
Gerald, where do people go? We're going to follow this race closely. Of course, everybody's saying right now, everybody, you're a long shot. So where do we go to get more information? Where can the War and Posse that participate as volunteers maybe hit you with a $20 donation, whatever? Where do folks go today? And what's your social media?
Sure. DeployMalloy.com is my website. Please take a look. You can go up to donate. Any kind of support will help. At Gerald Malloy, Vermont is my Facebook, one of the most popular sites in the whole state. Steve, I mentioned a West Point grad, decorated veteran. Vermonters are ready for change here, and this is a race I'm going to win. My candidate has done nothing. She's actually offended a lot of Vermonters. She's focused on 2 main issues. That's not the problem here in Vermont. It's affordability that she caused, and Vermonters have had it. Any kind of support will go very far here for a win and a rejection of socialism. That we really need to do that across our country right now.
Gerald, the Academy is very proud. Thank you for coming on. We're going to follow this closely. Look forward to having you back in the run-up to everything. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me. Thank you, sir.
Tenacity, folks. Malloy is anti-fragile. That's what this movement is, anti-fragile. Got beat up a little bit, got back up, won big last night. First guy announced on by national media as a win. So I've been saying that, we've been on this, we're the first guys to identify Mamdani as a threat back in the spring, actually the winter in spring of 2025 when I think he was polling at 5%. Because we could see what they were doing, the Working Family Party and DSA about canvassing, getting out the vote. Cuomo had $40 million. He had the Catholic Church endorsement, the big Jewish organizations, the cops, the firemen, the New York Times, Washington Post, kind of everybody. The traditional Frank Skeffington, the last hurrah kind of punch list. And this guy, Mamdani, had an army of people going door to door in Brooklyn and Queens. And, of course, he blew out Cuomo. Then you've got this situation in Michigan, the railhead of how we won World War II. Besides, in addition to the courage and valor of our troops, we were the arsenal for democracy out of Detroit in Texas. So in the evening of November 3rd, it is not a zero probability you could have Mamdani still running New York City and spreading his Marxist jihadist message throughout the country, to have a Marxist jihadist in the U.S. Senate from Michigan, and to have Tallarico, that piece of work, down in the Senate from Texas. Don't think that's a zero probability. People are going to have to put their shoulders to the wheel to do this. One of the ways we can do it, and I've been saying this, I don't think we should say socialism. This is Marxist jihadist. Andrew Kerr joins us from the Free Beacon with a terrific investigative piece on what is it, Abdul al-Said? Andrew, walk us through this, because I don't understand why no one else has reported. How did you get this? How you're the first guy out there that he's a not just believer, he's absolutely committed to Sharia law, right? And he doesn't make any bones about it. Of course, not just the mainstream media, but nobody's dug this up yet. Tell us how you got to this. What does it mean, sir?
Yeah, it's a rather remarkable quote that he gave to the New York Times when he was 24 years old in 2009. So this is before he ran for politics. And he says, I'll just read it out. Ultimately, the question is, when I die and I stand before God and go through everything I did in my life, I don't want to say I did it the easy way instead of the Sharia compliant way, not because of fear, but because of obligation. So that's him just saying in plain English that everything he does in life until the day he dies, he's going to do it the compliant with Sharia law. Frankly, I think the only reason why this hasn't been spotted yet in this election cycle is because the New York Times spelled Sharia with a trailing H, where often you see it spelled Sharia. Yeah, it's a remarkable quote. It's relevant. El-Said is openly running as a Muslim man. He doesn't hide that fact, but he's playing this delicate balancing act on the campaign trail where he likes to speak in these broad platitudes about, being a Muslim man, about how his faith, helps him be a better person. But when it comes to actually talking about the specifics, he dodges. Credit to Laura Loomer in 2018. She asked El-Said about this at a campaign event. She's on camera asking him, hey, you said that you're a Sharia compliant Muslim. And El-Said flatly rejected it. He said, I never said that. He cut the interview short, and then he scolded his staff for not ending it sooner. Sharia law is a religious laws that it prescribes death to apostates. It has harsh restrictions on women, gruesome medieval era forms of criminal justice, it's a worthwhile question asking, like, hey, El-Said, you say that everything in your life you're doing it the Sharia compliant way. That would presumably include how he legislates in the Senate should he win his election. And I strongly believe he owes voters an explanation what that actually means. He's a extremely devout Muslim man, that shows in his actions. He's invested in Sharia compliant investment funds. He's talked about how when he first married his wife, they didn't even live together for the first year, compliant with Muslim tradition. There's a 2020 documentary covering his 2018 run for governor, where he's on camera. This clip went viral on social media over the weekend, where he tells the cameraman, like, "Hey, don't point the camera on my bookshelf. We want to keep this shot secular." Well, on that bookshelf, there is several what appears to be several copies of the Quran, and several text analysis on Islam. There's one book where the book argues that suicidal terrorism is driven by foreign military occupation, not Islamic extremism. There's another book on his bookshelf by a Egyptian sheikh who testified as a defense witness for 13 Islamic terrorists who had gunned down an Egyptian professor in the early 90s. And during that trial, he says that he says, quote, "The refusal of implementation of Sharia is apostasy." And he said that this slain professor was without a doubt an infidel, and that most Islamic scholars would agree that such apostates should be killed. But for him, he believes that this guy should just receive the life sentence in prison. This is the guy that's writing the texts that are on El Said's bookshelf that he doesn't want film. This is the type of people. This is the type of person that's guiding his religious thinking. And so it's absolutely a relevant question to say, like, hey, like, what does Sharia law mean to you? How is that going to guide your governance? And he just doesn't want to talk about it.
Andrew, hang over one second. I'm going to hold you through the break because I want to drill down on this more. John Solomon's also going to join us. We have breaking news from the task force. John will get us fully up to speed on what they're doing. Birch Gold, take your phone and text Bannon, B-A-N-N, at 989898. Totally free, no obligation. You get the brochure about how to invest in gold and precious metals in the age of Trump. Also get access by going to birchgold.com/Bannon, the end of the dollar empire. 8 free installments all the way back from, I think, 2021 when gold was $1,100 an ounce. Check it out. End of the dollar empire. birchgold.com.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
John Solomon's going to join us in a moment with an update on the task force, the White House task force. We'll get to that momentarily. Andrew, just before you bounce, and if Mo and JoJo, Elizabeth, and Grace can push this out to the War and Posse, I want everybody to be a force multiplier. Read this piece today from the Free Beacon, Andrew Kerr, and then share it. Andrew, I don't want to bury the lead. When the camera crew was there, the 28 race, and they had the bookshelf, he said, no, I want to stay secular on this. To fairly judge Abdul, you have to look at the totality, particularly Sharia compliant. And people have to weigh and measure that. And there's going to be a lot more reporting. Posobic's already found the audio for his podcast for 5 years. So there's going to be a lot more of this. There hasn't been enough yet. Is that fair to do? Because the media is treating him as just some secular guy. But that's not, the good doctor, although he's maybe not a doctor, the good public health guy who's there to help people. You have to judge this in its totality of who this guy is, and a massive part of that is Sharia law and Sharia compliance, sir.
Yeah, and that's part of that delicate balancing act I was referring to. So El Said, in response to this story, his campaign told us that, hey, he respects the separation of church and state. He's faithful on a personal level, but separation of church and state. But he's on tape sharply criticizing efforts in Oklahoma, for example, to ban Sharia law. My colleague Alana Goodman back in January did a great piece that's making the rounds again, where he's speaking before Kerr and comparing conservative legal efforts to ban the implementation of Sharia law. He's saying that's akin to the Trail of Tears. If you truly believe in the separation of church and state, then you should support efforts to prevent religious law like Sharia law from becoming the law of the land. And El Said is on camera, on the record, saying that's a really bad thing. So absolutely, it's totally fair to judge, to take into consideration his stated obligation to follow Sharia law in every aspect of his life. That would presumably include how he governs in the Senate. It's totally relevant. And if he truly believes in separation of church and state, why is he so adamantly against efforts to ban the implementation of Sharia law across the country? It's a clear contradiction.
And dealing, as we've done, as we've worked with the people in Texas and put up the proposition to prohibit Sharia law in Texas, we know that Kerr has been designated by the governor of Texas, Abbott, as a terrorist organization, and by Governor DeSantis in Florida. So maybe he ought to think through about who he's actually working with to implement Sharia law in states like Oklahoma. Andrew, how do people get to the Free Beacon? You guys are putting up a lot of great stories on all this investigation. Where do they get you individually, and what's your social media coordinates, sir?
Thank you. Yeah, we're at freebeacon.com, and I'm on X at Andrew Kerr NC.
Andrew, great piece. I look forward to having you back here, sir. Keep hitting.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Posto's also going to be doing a whole analysis of the audio of the podcast. So that, I think it started last night, but the 2:00 show, I'm sure Posobic's going to spend a lot of time on that. Speaking about the 2:00 show, we get the 6:00 show co-host right here, John Solomon. John, can we get updates? You're putting some stuff up on Just the News all day long. It's kind of your second gig now. You're over the White House heading the task force. Can you get us up to speed on latest drops from the task force, sir?
It just happened this morning up at whitehouse.gov. We put the first documents out on an counterintelligence operation called Round River. This is the mirror reverse image of Crossfire Hurricane. So Crossfire Hurricane, they pursued Donald Trump on Democratic fake evidence that he was conspiring with Russia. As soon as that comes to an end, I break the original stories about Hunter Biden in Ukraine. And the FBI and the Intelligence Committee goes into a reverse operation, which is they're going to now neutralize real evidence from their own informants suggesting that Joe Biden and Hunter Biden have a corruption problem in Ukraine. They go into action and they do that. And what they begin doing is they go into there were 14 informants. One of the big headlines of this package that we made public this morning is there were 14 informants in the intelligence community and inside the FBI that were providing derogatory information on Joe Biden during the 2020 election. Some of them had been providing it consistently since 2015. Many of these informants had long trusted relationships with the U.S. government, one going all the way back to 2008. So they're good, long-serving informants. They're long reporting Biden corruption allegations. And as the 2020 election is nearing and the Ukraine impeachment takes on President Trump's efforts to look at this, my stories are getting discredited, even though they were true. The FBI launched a counterintelligence investigation called Round River. It's actually an operation, not an investigation. It's designed to neutralize all this information. They do three things. Perhaps the most concerning of the three is that they go into the files, these analysts go into the files of these informants who've been reporting this information on Joe Biden, and they mark it as Russian disinformation, so it can't be used to bring charges or investigate Hunter Biden or Joe Biden. They literally sanitize the files. The second thing they do is they go out and they start to divide the characters who are out on the public scene. There are people who are investigating Hunter Biden and those who are trying to say it's a conspiracy theory, and they put them into two categories. They treat Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, John Kerry, George Soros, and the Democrats who are named in the Ukraine files as victims of Russian disinformation, as targets of Russian disinformation. And then they take the sitting Attorney General, Bill Barr, the sitting Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, the sitting Chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley, the sitting Chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, Ron Johnson, and all those people who were investigating the legitimate information on Hunter Biden. By the way, I made the list, and they call them conduits of Russian disinformation. We are basically propagandists. That designation drives a significant amount of activity designed to suffocate or to snuff out any legitimacy to the Hunter Biden has a Ukraine corruption problem, which, by the way, the government's own files made clear. By the time this is going on, in 2020, the FBI has Hunter Biden's laptop. It has several of his partners cooperating. It has 14 confidential human sources. And yet this team goes in and tries to make it all look like it's Russian disinformation to protect Joe Biden and to hurt Donald Trump. It is an extraordinary abuse of the intelligence and law enforcement agencies of our country.
Hang on. So what the task force and Pulte, which you guys have shown in just a couple of weeks, that starting in May of 2017, there was beginning of an offensive coup d'etat against Trump to remove him. And now you're telling me that later there was essentially a blocking effort, a massive blocking effort by our intelligence and law enforcement officials to protect Joe Biden so that he could be viable against, since they couldn't remove Trump the illegal way, that they would protect Joe Biden with all the baggage he had to protect. The same intelligence and law enforcement did this. This is mind-boggling. Do I have that right? Is that basically the schematic?
That is a schematic. It's protect one guy and hurt the other. And it's not putting a thumb on the scale of the 2020 election. It's putting an entire body on the scale of the election. It is unheard of to have a group of analysts go in and take active informant files without evaluating whether the evidence is true. That's a very important thing. One of the documents that we made public today on the White House website, you go to whitehouse.gov, go to the election integrity tab, and you'll see it there under Round River, is a 2025 intelligence community review of this operation. In 25, the intelligence community looked back at this and said, we're very troubled by this. One of the things they were most troubled by was they were neutralizing and denigrating long-term informants who were providing valuable information without even determining whether what they were saying was true. They marked it Russian disinformation simply because it was about Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, and they didn't put any thought into whether the evidence might actually be true. We know that evidence is true now, right? That's why Hunter Biden got convicted twice in criminal cases, why the House ultimately concluded that Joe Biden ran a corruption scheme that enriched his family. But in 2020, while we were trying to make the choice between Joe Biden, the intelligence community was trying to make anyone investigating it look like a Russian disinformation artist, and anyone who was being questioned about it like a victim of Russian disinformation, even though that wasn't what was really going on. The informants were providing this evidence because that's what they do. The FBI had the laptop. It showed the corruption. It is really remarkable to see the intelligence community and the FBI behave this way, and it is a large form of election interference. There's no other way to call it.
Just two things. Bill Barr and Mike Pompeo, I know they were designated conduits or whatever, but they're in the direct chain of command of the reporting here. Did they actively go and freeze it out? Because isn't that a crime? Isn't that an additional crime? Because Pompeo ran CIA and Bill Barr was the attorney general. They're both in the loop here of chain of command. Did they actively keep this stuff suppressed so that they couldn't see it?
One of the things we're looking at, and there's a very important letter that we released today from FBI Director Kash Patel about this. He acknowledges he's troubled by what these initial files show. He's about to turn over tens of thousands of pages to the task force. And what he announced is that there's an ongoing investigation of the FBI personnel who did this Operation Round River to see if they committed any crimes. It's very rare for the FBI to investigate its own people for criminality. But what's most important about what he says, and it's really quite remarkable, is that the FBI should not be taking efforts to thwart its own attorney general. Let's remind people about something we probably long forgot about because it was 5-6 years ago. Bill Barr asked the Pittsburgh U.S. attorney to act like a special prosecutor and to determine if one informant, we had at the time in 2020, we knew there was one informant. It turns out there were 14, but we knew about one. And he asked the U.S. attorney in Pittsburgh to investigate whether that informant had legitimate evidence of illegality by Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, and the family. That was assigned to the Pittsburgh U.S. Attorney's Office. The FBI's counterintelligence division, the Round River group, the one that's running this operation, they used the Pittsburgh office to try to commandeer or to counter what Bill Barr and his U.S. attorney are trying to investigate. Wow. So Bill Barr is trying to find out if Hunter Biden committed crimes. The Round River team is trying to make the evidence look like it's Russian disinformation to prevent that to coming to a successful conclusion. It could be considered an act of obstruction.
This is 100%. This is where they sent Rudy and Bob Costello were told to go to Pittsburgh and sit down with the U.S. attorney. They spent 2 or 3 days there, gave them everything, and to know internally this stinks to high heaven. It shows you how corrupt this is. Last thing, John, I know you get a bounce, but Hunter Biden, himself is going around and making a number of appearances on podcasts and news things,
Yeah.
and he's saying that all of this is just made up. It's from other intelligence services. It's all Russian disinformation, or worse, it's plans from other intelligence services to smear he and his dad. Just any observations on that? We got about 30 seconds. Any observations on that?
From Hunter Biden's own emails, he admitted to his lawyers in the spring and summer of 2016 that he had not paid taxes. He had chipped the American taxpayer of taxes on all that money he was getting from Burisma. That is not Russian disinformation. That's his own damn email to his own lawyers. And by the way, the IRS agents made that public. There's nothing disinformation oriented about the allegations against Hunter Biden. They were confirmed. They were just being portrayed that way. That is a travesty because it amounts to election interference.
John, where do people go to get all this? It's explosive. Where do they go?
WhiteHouse.gov, under the election integrities, all the document releases so far. Just the News is the story that I wrote this day, along with my colleague Stephen Richards, and Jay Solomon reports on social media. And of course, every day at 6 o'clock, I get to follow the great Steve Bannon right here at Real America's Voice. So I'm very excited about that too.
Solomon, you're on fire. Thank you, sir, for spending time with us this morning. Short break.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
We talked about the Sharia law situation in Michigan with the candidate. Make sure you support 972 Patriot, Patriot Mobile. One for the Patriot Mobile guys. We were never gotten the support we needed when we put Sharia law on the ballot in Texas to prohibit it. And of course, the candidate in Michigan is going down to Oklahoma on tape with Kerr talking about implementing Sharia law in Oklahoma. Kerr, which, by the way, is designated as a terrorist organization by Governor Abbott in Texas and by Governor DeSantis in Florida. Patriot Mobile, 972 Patriot. You'll get someone with the East Texas accent. If you feel like having a prayer, do it. They love that. They also will tell you about all the great NGOs, charities, not-for-profits, all of it that they support. I think up to $3 million this year. Jenny and Glenn's story, two of the best. So go check it out. And check it out today. Patriot Mobile. Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins joins us. Lieutenant Governor, so Tuesday is decision day in Florida. Last night, you had some of the most radical people running on the Marxist jihadist ticket in throughout the country for these Democrats. Actually, some defeated, some won. What's the state of your race? And more importantly, talk to me about you would be taking on, it looks like, a former Republican who's like a constant MSNBC figure. How do you plan to beat him and actually become Governor Collins in the fall?
Well, I'll tell you what, 18 August is our primary. We are eyes on the prize, focused on this. We are going door to door, city to city. We're maximizing our media. And I have a novel idea. This is how we're winning it. I say what I mean what I say, and I get things done. I don't have to talk about hypothetically what we're going to do under my watch. I'm the lieutenant governor of Florida. I've learned from the greatest governor in our state's history. And when it comes to David Jolly, look, man, he is a radical leftist. We know who he is. He's going to try to masquerade and hide to bring those swing votes in. So we're going to go door to door, city to city, get on the media and expose exactly who he is, what he stands for. He has a radical left ideology. We're not going to bring back DEI, no more of the climate nonsense, ESG, all the things we fought are going to stay dead in the free state of Florida under my watch. We're going to be relentless. We have to be on the attack. We have the 1.5 million voter advantage in terms of Republicans, but we're going to work like we're down by 10 in the fourth quarter. Every inch, every foot we're going to fight for over and over. I want the people to know we have their back, but we're going to work for their trust.
When people go in the early voting, or when they go in on Tuesday, the 18th, and pull the trigger, what do you think is top of mind for them, and how are you answering that?
Well, look, the number one thing that we hear from everybody is about economy, affordability. I call it the American dream. We want them to have more of their money. I think we have to start with fundamentals. Our freedoms come from God. They're upheld by our Constitution. It's not the government's money. It's the people's money, and we want you to keep more of it. That means extreme accountability, responsibility, transparency. It means leading on the issues that are common sense, saying what you mean, meaning what you say. But friends, we have to be accountable. In the first 100 days, I'll tell you what, we're going to be in 100 communities. I'm a man of the people. While many electeds want to put themselves above the people on a pedestal, man, I am happy, I am healthy, and I believe in what our founding fathers believed in. That's a government of the people, by the people, for the people. I'm here to serve the state of Florida exactly how we've done it. And I'll tell you what, I want them to focus on three things, Steve. Three simple things. Do not promote somebody who hasn't been good at the job they're in. I passed 55 bills in 3 years as a state senator. I qualified as a Green Beret not once, but twice after I lost my leg. I have served as a lieutenant governor. I have been in every city, every town possible across this state. What do they do when times get hard? Do they run to the people or do they run to the microphone? Do they run to Twitter? Leadership isn't talking about it. Leadership is walking the walk on the ground where people's lives are. And the last thing is this, man, where does our moral compass point? As a leader, my moral compass was true when I had to talk to families, bury their loved ones under that flag draped coffin. We will, under my watch, be a people, a state, and a nation worthy of the sacrifice. We are the land of the free because of the sacrifice of the few and the service of the brave.
Lieutenant Governor, where do people go if they want to volunteer? Where do they go if they want to find out more about you? And where do they go if you're going to be around the state making visits, they actually see you in the flesh? Where do they go for all that?
Well, we're going to make a lot of visits. We're going to be all over the state over these last few days. Go to JAYFOR Florida. That's J4Florida.com. You can sign up. You can volunteer. You can get updates. You can go to our social media handles at JCollinsFL. And we'll be posting our schedule out there. Sign in, sign up, come visit us. We'd love nothing more than to talk to people in Florida. That's what we do. I remember where I came from. And together, we're going to make sure the next 8 years are the greatest 8 years.
Lieutenant Governor, thank you for Collins. Thank you for joining us. Look forward to talking to you guys next week. Thank you, sir.
Steve, I look forward to it. Thank you, brother. God bless.
So we invited all the participants. I think we've had 5 folks running for governor. It's very important. It's the free state of Florida, Texas and Florida, two of the most important states in the MAGA universe, and very important to follow on the great work that Governor DeSantis has done. And so this is a dogfight. We'll make sure we monitor it closely and give everybody access to the War Room posse, and you guys can weigh and measure and make your own decisions. A couple things. This Round River is so important. I've asked Jeff Clark to join us at the top of the hour. I want to break it down some more because it's completely outrageous, and I want to give a hat tip to Cash for doing this investigation in the FBI, which is quite extraordinary. We'll try to get that letter up also. As Cash has been saying, hey, I need prosecutors on this. And we got to get, like the guys in South Florida, hey, it's terrific. We got grand juries and panel and all that, but hey, it's time we got to get on with it. We have to get on with it. So Jeff Clark's going to join us. Natalie, on her explosive investigation, continues on naming more names. We're also going to talk to her about these military officers, which is still the most unacceptable thing I've ever seen, with the Chinese Communist Party. And I will discuss more as more information comes out about the Bidens. It is impossible. Joe Biden stole, and people around him stole, the 2020 election. He was illegitimate. He doesn't even have a picture on the Wall of Fame next to the Rose Garden, the portico that connects the residence of the White House and the official part of the White House with the West Wing. And he was in back of and oversaw a highly organized effort to, I don't know, bring in 10, 12, 20, 22 million. I think the official number is 13 or 14. Unofficial number much higher. Therefore, impossible to have a state funeral for this guy. Has to be a private service with the family. Short break. Back in a moment in the War Room.